There is a bird outside your window right now, or there was one recently, and it knows something about you that you've never considered. It knows your face. It remembers the last time you looked at it. And if you've ever done it harm, even once, even accidentally, there is a quiet, ancient part of its mind that is not forgotten. Most people spend their entire lives walking past this hidden intelligence as though it doesn't exist. You've probably never thought about what's happening inside that small skull. None of us really have. We were taught, in school, in the quiet assumption of everyday life, that birds are simple, that they react but don't reflect, that they feel perhaps but don't remember, that their world is immediate, instinctual, forgettable. What scientists discovered, quietly and over decades, shattered every single one of those assumptions. For most of modern history, the study of animal intelligence operated under a kind of invisible ceiling. There was a hierarchy, humans at the top, mammals below, and somewhere near the bottom, birds. Small brains, people assumed, meant small minds. There was even a phrase embedded in the culture for it. You've heard it. You probably said it. Bird brain. Meaning limited, dim, forgettable. That phrase, it turns out, was one of the most embarrassing scientific assumptions we ever quietly agreed to make. Because what was living inside the bird's brain, what researchers eventually found when they finally looked carefully, was something so sophisticated, it forced neuroscientists to rewrite their own rulebook. Birds don't have a neocortex. That's the layered, folded structure in the mammalian brain that we long believed was the only architecture capable of complex thought. For decades, this was used as proof. No neocortex, no higher reasoning. It seemed logical. It seemed settled. It was wrong. What researchers at the University of Alberta and later at multiple international neuroscience institutions began piecing together was something extraordinary. Birds had evolved an entirely different structure, a region called the pallium that performs many of the same cognitive functions as the mammalian neocortex, a completely separate evolutionary pathway to the same destination. Intelligence, it turned out, doesn't have one shape. It has many. Evolution built the same miracle twice, in completely different forms, and we had been ignoring one of them for a century. But the brain structure was only the beginning. What came next? What researchers discovered when they actually began testing bird memory in real environments, that's where things become genuinely unsettling. There is a species of bird called the Clark's nutcracker. It lives in the mountain forests of North America, and every autumn, it does something that should, by every assumption we once held, be completely beyond it. It buries up to 100,000 individual seeds. Scattered. Hidden. Across kilometers of terrain, beneath rocks and roots and snow. And then, months later, through winter storms and shifting landscapes, it returns. Not to roughly the right area, not to a general zone. To each specific location. With accuracy that, when researchers measured it, left them standing in silence. The spatial memory required to do this surpasses, in certain measurable ways, what the average human adult can perform in controlled laboratory conditions. Let that sit for a moment. A bird in a forest, navigating winter, remembers 100,000 locations with greater precision than you likely could. And it does this not as an exception, not as a quirk of one unusual species, but as a window into what bird cognition actually looks like when we finally start paying attention. And this is where things become even stranger. Memory for birds isn't only about location. It isn't only about survival logistics. In the 1990s, a University of Cambridge researcher named Nicola Clayton began studying a species called the western scrub jay, now known as the California scrub jay, and what she found would permanently change the scientific conversation about what it means to remember. These birds cache food. They hide it in specific spots and return for it later. That alone was interesting. But Clayton introduced a variable that no one had thought to test before. She let some jays hide food while other jays watched. And then she observed what the hider did next. The jays who had been observed, who knew another bird had seen where they hid their cache, went back later, alone, and moved it. They didn't just remember where they hid the food. They remembered who had been watching. They reasoned about what that observer now knew. They anticipated a future theft based on a past social experience, and they acted to prevent it. This is not instinct. Instinct doesn't account for individual observers. Instinct doesn't make strategic social calculations based on memory of specific events. What Clayton had documented was something researchers call episodic-like memory. The ability to remember not just what happened, but where it happened, and crucially, when. For a long time, scientists believed episodic memory, that deeply human sense of reliving a specific past moment, was uniquely ours. A gift of consciousness, of selfhood, of the kind of inner life we assumed only humans and perhaps a few great apes possessed. The scrub jay dismantled that assumption. Quietly. In a laboratory in Cambridge, hiding food while someone watched. But here is what makes this personal for you. Because this isn't just about birds in labs or birds in mountain forests. This is about the bird in your yard, the one at your feeder, the crow on the telephone wire outside your kitchen window. Researchers at the University of Washington conducted a study that has since become quietly famous in the world of animal cognition. They wanted to know whether wild crows could recognize and remember individual human faces, so they captured crows on campus, a process the birds, understandably, did not enjoy, while the researchers wore specific rubber masks, caveman masks as it happened. The crows were then released. What followed was not what anyone predicted. For years afterward, those crows, and their offspring, and crows in surrounding areas who had never been captured, responded with hostility specifically to anyone wearing those masks. They scolded them. They dive-bombed them. They recruited other crows. They had not only remembered the face, they had taught the memory to others. The researchers walked the same campus routes, wearing different masks, and experienced nothing. They wore the caveman masks and were mobbed within seconds. Same campus, same people. Different face, different response. Every time. The crow on your street is not simply a bird. It is an individual with a memory of individuals, including, quite possibly, you. And here is the layer of that fact that quietly changes everything. If crows remember faces with hostility when treated badly, what happens when they are treated with kindness? What researchers found, watching urban crow populations over time, is something that feels almost too strange to be scientific fact. Crows in neighborhoods where people had fed them, acknowledged them, behaved gently near them. Those crows behaved differently. They allowed closer proximity. They were less alarmed by that person's presence. Some brought objects to regular feeders, pieces of glass, a small button, a lost earring. Scientists have documented this enough times now that it has a framework around it. Crows appear to reciprocate, not randomly, not toward all humans, toward specific ones, the ones they remember. Your yard, your feeder, your morning routine. If there are crows nearby, you may already be in a relationship you never knew you were in. But memory in birds runs even deeper than recognition, deeper than strategy, deeper than social calculation. There is a dimension of bird memory that touches something far more philosophically unsettling, something that forces the question of whether birds not only remember the past, but anticipate a future they have never experienced. There is a species of bird, the Eurasian jay, that was studied by researchers at Cambridge in a now landmark experiment. The birds were given access to 2 separate breakfast rooms on alternating days. One room always had the same food. The other rotated. The jays learned the pattern. And then, the evening before, when given the chance to cache food for the next morning, they cached more food in the room where they anticipated the worst breakfast. They were planning, not for the immediate moment, for a specific future scenario they had constructed in their minds based on past experience. They were mentally projecting themselves into tomorrow's breakfast situation, which they had never experienced yet, and making decisions tonight to make that future better. This is called future-oriented cognition. And for most of scientific history, it was considered a hallmark of human intelligence. The ability to mentally travel forward in time, to imagine a version of yourself in a future moment and prepare for it. The Eurasian jay does this before bed, quietly, in a cage in Cambridge. What does it mean, truly mean, that the birds outside your window might be doing something structurally similar to what you do when you set your alarm at night? When you pack a bag for tomorrow? When you worry about something that hasn't happened yet? And now we arrive at the part of this story that changes the texture of the world permanently, if you let it. The birds that pass through your yard, that sit on your fence, that return to your feeder season after season, they carry individual memories spanning years. A Clark's nutcracker can remember 100,000 locations for 9 months. A crow remembers a human face for at least 5 years, possibly longer. A scrub jay remembers not just where food is hidden, but who watched and what they might do about it. They experience time not as an endless present, as we long assumed, but as something layered. Something that contains a past they remember and a future they prepare for. Research published in journals including Nature, Animal Behavior, and Current Biology has steadily, over the last 3 decades, dismantled the old story. The one that said intelligence was our exclusive territory. The one that let us walk past birds without a second thought. The new story is harder, more beautiful, more strange. The bird returning to your feeder every morning remembers far more about you than most people you briefly meet will ever retain. It has logged your patterns, your timing, your appearance, whether you are trustworthy, whether you are a threat. It has made an ongoing assessment of you, updated every visit, stored in a brain that was once dismissed as too small to matter. And there is one more thing, one final layer, that the research quietly suggests, though scientists are careful with their words around it. The scrub jay, when its mate dies, has been observed standing over the body, not moving, not eating, not fleeing, standing. And sometimes nearby jays, who may have known the dead bird, gather. They do not eat the food they encounter in that area for a time. They stand in something that has no clean scientific name yet. Whether it is grief in any sense we would recognize, researchers will not say definitively, but they will say this: it is not nothing. It involves memory of an individual. It involves a response to the absence of something that was once present. It involves a pause that seems, in its shape, like the beginning of morning. You once thought the world of birds was a background hum, a pleasant decoration on your morning. Color and sound, nothing more. But the bird that visits your yard tomorrow carries a rich, layered internal world. It remembers, it plans, it recognizes, it grieves, perhaps, in its own quiet way. It looks at you, and there is something looking back that is far older, far stranger, and far more aware than anything we gave it credit for being. The science didn't discover a new species. It discovered a new way of seeing the ones that have been here all along. The next time a crow meets your eyes from across the street, hold the gaze for a moment. It already knows who you are. Has a bird ever done something that made you stop and truly wonder what was happening behind its eyes? Tell me what you saw. I'd genuinely like to know.